Jeremiah King had always been a man of quiet confidence, rising from humble beginnings to become one of the wealthiest and most influential businessmen in the world. He had recently closed a major deal and was looking forward to a well-deserved weekend getaway. The Belmore, with its marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and flawless reputation, seemed like the perfect place to unwind. Renowned as a haven for the elite, it was a place where privacy and luxury were guaranteed. Jeremiah arrived in comfortable jeans, a plain white t-shirt, and a leather jacket. He didn't care for attention and prided himself on blending into his surroundings. His only companion was his assistant, Elijah, a man with a sharp mind and an unwavering loyalty to Jeremiah, who had given him a chance years ago when no one else would. As they entered the grand lobby, Jeremiah couldn't help but admire the intricate architecture and lavish decor. It was clear that every detail in the Belmore was meticulously crafted to create an atmosphere of opulence and exclusivity. But his admiration was short-lived. Almost immediately, he sensed the judgmental stares from the well-dressed patrons and staff. At the reception desk, Emma, a young woman with a meticulously styled appearance and a smile that could turn to ice in seconds, glanced at him with mild disdain. It was subtle, just a slight narrowing of her eyes and a barely perceptible sneer. To Jeremiah, it was all too familiar. He had experienced similar reactions in his early years, long before his wealth and status had become public knowledge. "Good afternoon," Jeremiah said politely, handing over his ID and reservation confirmation. Emma glanced at the information, then quickly scanned his appearance, her expression growing more dismissive by the second. "I'm sorry, sir," she replied, her tone professional yet cold, "but we don't accept walk-ins without prior arrangement. This is an exclusive establishment, and we have certain standards to uphold." Jeremiah held back a smile, recognizing the all-too-familiar language of condescension. He gestured calmly to the reservation on his phone. "I understand, but as I mentioned, I do have a reservation. It should be under the name Jeremiah King." Emma's eyes flicked to the screen, a hint of irritation flashing across her face. She had heard the name somewhere but couldn't place it. She tapped away on her computer, pretending to check, then glanced back up at Jeremiah with a tight smile. "I'm afraid I don't see any reservation here. Besides, as I mentioned, the Belmore does have a dress code." A faint, amused look passed over Elijah's face. He knew Jeremiah could pull out a business card or make a call that would have Emma scrambling to assist. But Jeremiah had always preferred a more subtle approach. Instead, he quietly observed as the manager, Mr. Lawson, approached, noticing the commotion. Mr. Lawson, a seasoned hotel manager with a knack for maintaining the Belmore's pristine image, sized Jeremiah up with a single look. His face held a carefully composed expression, yet his eyes betrayed the same judgment. He turned to Emma. "Is there an issue here?" Emma responded without hesitation, casting Jeremiah a sideways glance. "This gentleman claims he has a reservation, but I don't see one under his name, and well..." Her voice trailed off as she subtly indicated his casual attire. Lawson's gaze turned steely. "Sir, the Belmore prides itself on a certain clientele and atmosphere," he began, his voice dripping with barely veiled contempt. "We have to maintain our standards. Perhaps there's another hotel nearby that would be more appropriate." It was then that one of the bellhops, a young man named Luis, noticed Jeremiah from across the room. Luis had been following Jeremiah's story for years, inspired by his journey from poverty to prosperity. He watched the scene unfold with a sinking heart, noticing the dismissive tone and the embarrassment crossing Jeremiah's face as he and Elijah were turned away. Jeremiah offered a polite nod, but the glint in his eyes hinted at the fury boiling beneath his calm exterior. "Thank you," he said evenly, his voice steady. "I'll take your suggestion to heart." As he and Elijah turned to leave, Luis started forward, his voice low. "Mr. King," he whispered urgently, "I'm so sorry about this. I know who you are, and you don't deserve this treatment." Jeremiah looked at him, a small smile playing on his lips. He appreciated the respect and sincerity in the young man's eyes. "Thank you, Luis," he replied, nodding. "And don't worry, I'll be back soon enough. Outside the hotel, Jeremiah took a deep breath, composing himself. He turned to Elijah with a determined look. "Let's go, Elijah. I have an idea of how we can make this trip more interesting after the incident at the Belmore." Jeremiah couldn't shake the image of the disdainful faces of the hotel staff, the sneering tone of Mr. Lawson, or the helpless glances from those few staff members who seemed to know him, yet could do nothing to change the situation. He felt a familiar mixture of anger and disappointment, but he was not a man to let such feelings go unanswered. This experience had left him with a purpose beyond merely owning hotels or collecting assets. Jeremiah knew it was time to make a powerful statement. The Belmore Hotel, a well-known icon of luxury and exclusivity, was owned by a global conglomerate. Its prestige came not only from its lavish decor and celebrity clientele, but from its meticulously cultivated reputation. This hotel represented the high society Jeremiah had once been denied entry to and had now built an empire to join. It was time to bring the Belmore under his wing. Within days of his decision, Jeremiah mobilized his legal and financial teams to initiate a discreet takeover. He contacted his most trusted attorney, Marissa, a sharp-witted woman with an unrivaled understanding of high-stakes deals. Marissa understood the intricacies of acquiring a landmark as influential as the Belmore, and with her help, Jeremiah set his plan in motion. The goal was simple: buy the Belmore without revealing his identity until the acquisition was complete. Jeremiah held the first strategy meeting in his New York office with Marissa, Elijah, and his top financial advisor, Marco. Marissa outlined the plan. "We'll start by buying out the smaller shareholders and then work up to the larger stakes. By the time they realize who's behind the buyout, we'll have majority control," she explained, her eyes gleaming with confidence. "If we play this right, they won't see it coming until it's too late." Over the next several weeks, Jeremiah's team executed the plan with precision. Shares of the hotel conglomerate were quietly acquired through proxy investors. The company's board was caught off guard by the sudden shift, and as the shares changed hands, they grew increasingly anxious. Rumors began to swirl in the business world. Who was behind the acquisition? Speculation ran wild, with theories ranging from tech moguls to real estate magnates, but no one suspected Jeremiah. Finally, after weeks of strategic maneuvering, the day arrived. Marissa, on the phone with the last significant shareholder, concluded the final negotiation. "Congratulations, Mr. King," she said, smiling triumphantly. "You're now the majority owner of the Belmore Hotel." Jeremiah took a deep breath, feeling a sense of satisfaction. This wasn't just a business deal. It was an opportunity to right a wrong. He nodded to Marissa, then turned to Elijah. "Contact the board of directors. Let them know I'll be visiting the hotel for an all-staff meeting on Monday." The following Monday, Jeremiah walked back into the Belmore with a new sense of purpose. Dressed in a tailored suit that emphasized his authority, he made his way into the grand lobby, this time accompanied by his entire executive team. The staff, still unaware of his identity, greeted him with blank stares or polite nods, oblivious to the fact that he was now their boss. The board members of the Belmore's parent company, who had been notified of the acquisition over the weekend, awaited him in the private lounge. They were a group of impeccably dressed executives who, just a few days prior, held immense influence over the hotel's operations. Now, with their shares diluted and control lost, they looked on nervously as Jeremiah took his seat at the head of the table. "Good morning, everyone," Jeremiah began, his tone calm but authoritative. "As of today, I am the majority owner of the Belmore. I understand that this may come as a surprise, but rest assured, my intentions are clear. I want this hotel to maintain its prestige, but we're going to make some changes to ensure it's a place of true respect and excellence." Some board members shifted uncomfortably, while others nodded, recognizing Jeremiah's status and understanding that they had little choice in the matter. After addressing the board, Jeremiah moved on to the main event, an all-staff meeting. The hotel employees gathered in the grand ballroom, whispering among themselves about who the new owner could be. Rumors had spread fast since the announcement, and most assumed the new owner was yet another wealthy investor from Europe or Asia. When Jeremiah stepped onto the stage, silence fell over the room. He scanned the crowd, and his gaze landed on familiar faces. Emma, who looked visibly uneasy, and Mr. Lawson, who maintained a tense, stoic expression. In contrast, a few of the younger staff members, like Luis the bellhop, were barely able to contain their excitement, recognizing Jeremiah instantly. "Good afternoon," he began, his voice carrying across the room with quiet authority. "I am Jeremiah King, your new employer." The room buzzed with murmurs, and Emma's face turned pale. She recognized him, the man she had turned away with thinly veiled contempt. Jeremiah continued, addressing the entire staff with a calm, unyielding gaze. "The Belmore has a reputation, and that reputation is what brought me here. But when I visited recently, I experienced something that I never expected from an establishment of this caliber. My experience here was not one of respect or professionalism, but of judgment based on appearance." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. The staff shifted uncomfortably, some glancing nervously at Emma and Mr. Lawson, realizing where this was going. "Moving forward, the Belmore will be under new management," he continued. "We're going to redefine what it means to be a luxury hotel, starting with a foundation of respect for everyone, no matter their appearance or background." Mr. Lawson, clearly rattled, spoke up. "Mr. King, I assure you that the Belmore has always maintained the highest standards." Jeremiah's gaze remained steady as he replied, "Standards are important, Mr. Lawson, but not if they breed prejudice." He turned his attention to the entire room, his voice unwavering. "I don't intend to dismantle the legacy of the Belmore. Rather, I want to rebuild it as a place where all guests are valued and respected. We'll start by reevaluating our policies and our approach to customer service." The murmurs grew louder as the staff absorbed the gravity of the situation. Some, like Luis, looked inspired, while others appeared apprehensive, especially those who had participated in turning him away. Before leaving the stage, Jeremiah announced, "In the coming weeks, all employees will be undergoing new training, and our recruitment practices will be re-examined to promote a culture of inclusivity and respect. Those who embrace these changes are welcome to stay and grow with the Belmore. For those who cannot, we will part ways professionally." The announcement marked a turning point. Jeremiah had not only taken ownership of the Belmore, but had also planted the seeds for a transformation that would shake its very foundation. As he walked off the stage, he caught Emma's stunned expression and Mr. Lawson's resentful glare, but he paid them no mind. He was here to build something bigger than himself, something that could show the world that respect was the true standard of luxury. Jeremiah's acquisition of the Belmore had sent shockwaves through the hotel staff and the broader hospitality industry. The hotel had always prided itself on exclusivity and luxury, but Jeremiah's vision promised something different: inclusivity, respect, and a commitment to treating every guest with dignity. His first few days as owner were spent observing the hotel's operations closely, noting where policies needed to be redefined and where behavior required correction. Jeremiah began by holding individual meetings with key staff members, including Mr. Lawson and Emma, the two employees directly responsible for his earlier humiliation. During the meeting, he observed that Mr. Lawson maintained a practiced air of politeness, but struggled to hide his underlying resentment. Emma, on the other hand, looked visibly nervous, clearly feeling the weight of her earlier actions. "Mr. Lawson, Emma," Jeremiah began, his tone neutral but authoritative, "I want you both to know that I'm here to help the Belmore become a place where every guest feels valued. This is an opportunity for everyone to start fresh, but it will require dedication and an open mind. Are you ready to embrace this change?" Mr. Lawson nodded stiffly, his face expressionless. Emma, on the other hand, managed a faint smile, though her discomfort was palpable. Jeremiah could see that, despite their verbal agreement, they were resistant to the changes he had in mind. Still, he decided to give them and the rest of the staff a chance to demonstrate their willingness to adapt. In her opening session with the staff, Dr. Briggs introduced them to the concept of invisible bias. She explained, "We all carry assumptions about people based on appearance, background, and status. The purpose of this training is to help you identify those biases and consciously work to overcome them." Her sessions were interactive, forcing the staff to confront uncomfortable truths about their own prejudices and preconceived notions. For some, like Luis, the bellhop who had recognized Jeremiah and treated him respectfully, the training was a welcome change. Finally, he whispered to a fellow employee during one of the sessions, "We're learning how to treat everyone the way they deserve." Luis's genuine enthusiasm served as a bright spot for Jeremiah, reminding him that not everyone at the Belmore had shared in the elitist attitudes he had encountered. Others, however, struggled to accept the new direction. Emma was often visibly uncomfortable during the exercises, especially when asked to reflect on her treatment of guests based on their appearance. Her discomfort grew when she was paired with Luis in a role-playing exercise designed to highlight the challenges faced by guests of different backgrounds. Watching Luis speak passionately about his experiences with discrimination left her feeling unsettled, forcing her to confront the harsh reality of her actions. One evening, after a long day of training sessions, Jeremiah walked to the hotel, observing how the changes were taking root. As he passed the dining area, he overheard Emma and a few other employees murmuring in low voices. She was complaining about the recent changes, expressing frustration over the new standards and lamenting that the Belmore was losing its exclusivity. Jeremiah stepped into the room quietly, making his presence known. Emma froze, her face turning red as she realized he had overheard her complaints. The other staff members scattered, leaving her alone with Jeremiah. "Emma," Jeremiah began, his tone calm but firm, "I understand that change is difficult, especially when it challenges long-standing beliefs. But I want you to know that I won't tolerate disrespect toward any guest or resistance to the values we're trying to instill here. If you're unwilling to align with these changes, you're welcome to find another place that better suits your views." Emma's face fell, and she managed a small nod, clearly aware that her actions had put her on thin ice. "I'm sorry, Mr. King," she replied quietly. I just didn't expect things to change so drastically." Jeremiah nodded, softening slightly. "I understand, but the world is changing, Emma, and it's time the Belmore changes too. If you're open to it, you might find this new direction fulfilling." Alongside the training, Jeremiah also implemented a new policy he called the Belmore's Promise. The policy required that every guest be treated with equal respect and care, regardless of their background or appearance. He had the policy printed and framed, placing it prominently in the hotel lobby and in every staff area. It read, "The Belmore's Promise. A pledge to treat each guest as an honored guest, each employee as a valued team member, and to ensure that every interaction reflects our commitment to dignity and respect." One day, a group of high-profile guests arrived, wealthy businessmen from overseas who were accustomed to receiving special treatment at luxury establishments. They were loud, demanding, and dismissive of the staff, especially Luis and some of the newer hires, whom they treated as invisible. Mr. Lawson, watching the scene, initially moved to accommodate their demands, believing that their status warranted preferential treatment. But Jeremiah intercepted him with a quiet reminder. "Remember, Mr. Lawson," he said, "the Belmore's Promise. We treat all guests equally, but we don't allow disrespect toward our staff." Reluctantly, Mr. Lawson addressed the businessmen, requesting they moderate their behavior and treat the staff with courtesy. This small but powerful gesture marked a significant shift in the hotel's culture. The staff began to realize that Jeremiah wasn't just making empty promises. He was committed to building a respectful and inclusive environment, even if it meant challenging long-standing practices. As the Belmore's transformation continued, Jeremiah decided to reward those who embraced the changes. He implemented an employee recognition program to celebrate individuals who embodied the hotel's new values. Luis, with his respectful attitude and enthusiasm for the changes, quickly became a standout. In one of the monthly meetings, Jeremiah recognized Luis's contributions in front of the entire staff, promoting him to head bellhop, a role that came with increased responsibility and a pay raise. Luis's promotion sparked hope among the staff, especially among those who had previously felt overlooked. Other employees from underrepresented backgrounds began to step forward, expressing ideas and initiatives to enhance guest experience and workplace inclusivity. Jeremiah welcomed their input, encouraging an open-door policy and ensuring that even the most junior staff members had a voice. Despite the progress, not everyone was thrilled. Mr. Lawson continued to struggle with the loss of his former authority and the shift away from his vision of the Belmore. He grew resentful of Luis's success and irritated by the new direction. Emma, too, wavered, caught between her frustration and a growing awareness of her own biases. She often found herself reflecting on the changes, feeling a mixture of resentment and shame. With the transformation of the Belmore well underway, the hotel began attracting a new clientele, guests who appreciated not only luxury, but also the inclusive atmosphere that Jeremiah had fostered. Positive reviews flooded in from all kinds of visitors, praising the unexpected warmth of the hotel staff and the sense of respect that permeated the space. However, with success came scrutiny, and some among the hotel's old guard, led by Mr. Lawson, still resisted the changes. Behind closed doors, Mr. Lawson and a small faction of employees loyal to him continued to grumble about the shift in the hotel's culture. They missed the exclusivity, the polished veneer of sophistication that came with catering only to a select few. Mr. Lawson, emboldened by his supporters, began planning to undermine Jeremiah's reforms subtly, believing he could influence things to bring back the old Belmore. Unaware of Mr. Lawson's plans, Jeremiah continued to focus on deepening the hotel's values. He organized a guest appreciation gala as part of the Belmore's new vision, a celebration of diversity and respect, where both staff and guests would be recognized for their contributions. He envisioned it as a signature event for the hotel and a public symbol of the hotel's new identity. Invitations were sent to both loyal patrons and newcomers, and soon the preparations were underway. To make the gala truly inclusive, Jeremiah brought in his top event planner, Megan, a dynamic woman known for her ability to blend luxury with authenticity. Megan's planning style was meticulous, focusing on every detail, from the diversity of the menu to the evening's entertainment, which included performers from a variety of cultural backgrounds. She worked closely with staff members, ensuring everyone felt involved and invested in the event's success. However, as preparations went on, subtle signs of sabotage began to emerge. Some employees loyal to Mr. Lawson delayed orders, mishandled important deliveries, and quietly spread rumors that the gala would be disastrous. The tension in the hotel grew palpable as loyal and resistant employees found themselves at odds. A week before the gala, Jeremiah noticed something strange. In a staff meeting, he overheard one of the junior employees discussing an incident involving a misplaced order of floral arrangements. She mentioned that Mr. Lawson had reassigned the delivery without informing the events team. Sensing something amiss, Jeremiah decided it was time to intervene directly. He gathered his senior staff, including Megan and Luis, for a private meeting. Jeremiah explained his concerns about the recent mishaps and his suspicion that someone might be attempting to disrupt the gala. This gala is important not only for the Belmore but for the message we're sending out into the world, he said, his tone firm but calm. If anyone here knows anything about what's been going on, now is the time to speak up. Luis exchanged a glance with Megan before he spoke. Mr. King, I hate to say it, but I've noticed that Mr. Lawson and some of his supporters haven't been too happy with the changes. I don't have any proof, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're behind these accidents. Megan nodded, her face troubled. I've noticed it too, especially in the logistics. It's as though some people are intentionally creating obstacles. Jeremiah listened carefully, his expression unreadable. When everyone finished speaking, he made his decision. If Mr. Lawson and his supporters think they can derail this, they're mistaken. I want everyone on high alert leading up to the gala. We'll keep an eye on things, and if there's further interference, I'll address it personally. The night before the gala, Jeremiah decided to conduct a quiet inspection of the preparations. As he moved through the ballroom, he noticed that several tables had been set up improperly, with seating arrangements out of place. The decorations, too, were haphazard, with some of the carefully chosen centerpieces replaced by cheap imitations. It was clear that someone was tampering with the event setup, hoping to create a subpar experience. Just then, he heard muffled voices in a corner near the storage room. Recognizing one as Mr. Lawson's, Jeremiah stepped closer, listening intently. "This gala is a waste of time," Mr. Lawson said, his voice low and harsh. "The Belmore was never meant to cater to every random guest who walks through the door. We're supposed to be exclusive. Jeremiah King thinks he can turn this place into a charity project, but we'll show him that the Belmore isn't some inclusive haven." Another voice responded, agreeing with him but sounding hesitant. "But what if he finds out, Mr. Lawson? This could cost us our jobs." "He won't find out. And if he does, it'll be too late. Tomorrow's event will show him and everyone else that his new Belmore is an embarrassment." Jeremiah felt a surge of anger, but kept his composure. With this confirmation, he realized he could no longer allow Mr. Lawson's toxic influence to continue. He turned away quietly, already formulating a plan for the morning. The next day, hours before the gala, Jeremiah called an emergency staff meeting in the grand ballroom. The employees gathered, sensing the tension in the air, and murmurs filled the room as they awaited Jeremiah's announcement. Mr. Lawson stood to the side with his supporters, looking wary but defiant. Jeremiah walked onto the stage, his face resolute. "Good morning, everyone," he began. "I want to address a situation that has come to my attention. I have reason to believe that some among us have been actively working to undermine tonight's gala." He paused, letting his gaze settle on Mr. Lawson, who avoided his eyes. "Let me be clear. The Belmore's promise is not just a policy. It's a commitment to respect, inclusivity, and excellence. Anyone who cannot abide by these values is free to leave." His voice was calm but laced with steel. After a tense silence, Mr. Lawson spoke up, unable to contain himself. "With all due respect, Mr. King, this hotel's reputation was built on exclusivity and tradition. By catering to everyone, you're turning the Belmore into just another generic hotel." Jeremiah responded evenly, his gaze unwavering. "Exclusivity should never mean exclusion, Mr. Lawson. The Belmore's legacy doesn't belong to a single vision. It belongs to the people who come here to experience something extraordinary. We have a responsibility to treat every guest with the respect they deserve." A murmur of agreement rippled through the staff, emboldened by Jeremiah's words. Many employees, including those who had been uncertain, looked on with admiration, inspired by his commitment to the new values. Realizing he was outnumbered, Mr. Lawson scoffed, his expression bitter. "Fine. If this is the way things are going to be, then perhaps it's time I leave," he said with forced bravado. He cast a final disdainful look around the room before turning on his heel and leaving, his supporters hesitating before following him out. As the doors closed behind them, a sense of relief washed over the room. Jeremiah addressed the remaining staff. "Thank you all for standing by the Belmore's new vision. Tonight's gala will be a celebration of what we've become, a place that values people over appearances, that honors respect and dignity. Let's make this a night to remember." Following the success of the Guest Appreciation Gala, Jeremiah's vision for the Belmore seemed fully realized. The hotel was thriving, with its reputation now rooted not just in opulence, but in a refreshing, inclusive spirit that drew guests from every corner of the world. Yet, while the hotel flourished, Jeremiah sensed that some of the employees, even those who had embraced the changes, still harbored reservations. He wanted to address these lingering hesitations and, in doing so, share a side of himself that he had kept hidden until now. One morning, Jeremiah called for a staff meeting in the same ballroom where the gala had taken place. The employees, though curious, weren't as apprehensive as before. By now, they trusted Jeremiah and his leadership style. though a few still wondered why he was so invested in the hotel's shift toward inclusivity and respect. After everyone gathered, Jeremiah began speaking, his voice carrying a calm confidence that resonated throughout the room. Today, I want to tell you a story. It's not just about why I bought the Belmore, but why I believe so strongly in the changes we're making here. He paused, letting his gaze travel over his team, many of whom leaned forward intrigued. Several years ago, when I was just starting out in business, I came to the Belmore with the intent of celebrating my first major success. I had saved up for months to afford just one night here, a chance to treat myself after years of hard work. But when I arrived, I was turned away. I remember the exact words the front desk manager said to me. "Perhaps you'd be more comfortable at a hotel down the street." His tone was matter-of-fact, but those who knew him could sense the deep emotions behind his words. Gasps and murmurs filled the room as the employees processed this revelation. Many hadn't known about this incident, and those who did had assumed it was just a rumor. Luis, who had grown close to Jeremiah over the past months, asked, Did they really say that to you? Just because they thought you didn't belong here? Jeremiah nodded, offering a small, rueful smile. Exactly. They looked at me and made a judgment. One based solely on appearances, on preconceived notions of who deserves luxury. It's a common experience for people who don't fit the mold, who don't look or act in a way that others expect. That day, I promised myself that if I ever had the chance, I'd create a space where everyone felt welcome. That's why I bought the Belmore, and why I'm committed to this vision. Emma, who had been one of the first employees to act coldly toward him on that fateful day, shifted uncomfortably. Her face flushed as she looked down, clearly grappling with the weight of her past actions. In the months since the takeover, she made a conscious effort to change. But hearing Jeremiah's personal story brought her own behavior into sharp focus. After a brief silence, she raised her hand hesitantly. "Mr. King, I didn't know. I was one of the people who judged you without even trying to get to know you. I just assumed you weren't meant for a place like this." Her voice was choked with regret, and she struggled to meet his gaze. Jeremiah looked at her kindly. "Thank you for saying that, Emma. I know change isn't easy, especially when it challenges the way we've always seen things. But growth is about moving forward, about learning and making things better for ourselves and those around us." With his acknowledgement, Emma seemed to release a burden she'd carried since that day. She nodded, relief evident on her face, and vowed to continue her transformation with even more dedication. In the days that followed, Jeremiah continued to open up, sharing stories of his journey and the hurdles he had overcome. The staff began to see him not just as their boss, but as someone who truly understood the struggles that came with prejudice and judgment. His transparency inspired even those who had been hesitant to embrace the new values, bridging the last gaps between them and his vision. Encouraged by Jeremiah's openness, other staff members also began sharing their experiences of discrimination or unfair treatment in their past workplaces. In these sessions, they not only bonded with each other, but also began to understand why the transformation of the Belmore was so vital. As they listened to each other's stories, a sense of unity and purpose spread through the team. The new Belmore wasn't just a place to work. It was a place where people could find belonging, no matter their background. One evening, as the staff gathered in the lounge after a long day, Luis approached Emma, who had been quieter than usual since Jeremiah's story. He sat beside her, sensing she had something on her mind. "Hey, Emma, you okay?" he asked gently. She hesitated before speaking, her voice barely a whisper. "You know, Luis, I've been thinking a lot about how I used to see people. I was so proud of working here, of this hotel's prestige, that I thought I was better than the guests who didn't fit in. But Jeremiah, he's shown me how wrong I was." She looked up, her expression vulnerable. "I didn't realize how much it mattered to treat everyone with respect, to really see them." Luis nodded, his face thoughtful. "We've all been there, Emma. But you know, it's never too late to change. The fact that you're willing to see things differently now, that's what really counts." As the staff began to see the positive effects of their transformed attitudes in their interactions with guests, Their pride in the Belmore grew. The guests themselves noticed the change and often remarked on how welcoming and attentive the team was. Reviews poured in, with guests praising the hotel not only for its luxury, but for the warmth and respect they felt from the staff. Then one day, an unexpected visitor arrived, a woman in her 60s, immaculately dressed, carrying an aura of elegance and pride. She introduced herself at the front desk as Claudia Barrington, the former owner of the Belmore. Word quickly spread through the hotel that Claudia was there, and soon the staff, including Jeremiah, gathered in the lobby intrigued. Claudia had sold the hotel a few years earlier, but she'd always been a symbol of the old Belmore and its elitist legacy. "Mr. King," she greeted him as he approached. "I've heard about the changes you've made here. I wanted to see for myself what the Belmore has become." Her tone was cool, her eyes taking in the bustling lobby, where guests from all walks of life mingled comfortably. Jeremiah offered a polite smile. "Welcome back to the Belmore, Miss Barrington. I hope you'll find it just as welcoming and beautiful as it's always been." Claudia raised an eyebrow. "It certainly looks different," she replied, a hint of disapproval in her tone. She looked around, as if searching for something she had lost. "In my day, the Belmore was known for its exclusivity, its prestige. I never would have imagined." Her voice trailed off, but her meaning was clear. Jeremiah, unruffled, met her gaze evenly. "Exclusivity and respect aren't mutually exclusive, Miss Barrington. I wanted the Belmore to be a place that honored everyone who walked through its doors. Luxury isn't about closing people off. It's about giving everyone the best experience possible." Claudia seemed taken aback by his calm conviction. For a moment, she appeared to struggle with her response. But then, to everyone's surprise, her expression softened. "Well, I'll admit," she began slowly, "the staff does seem happier. And the guests," she glanced at a family nearby, laughing together as they checked in. "They do seem at ease. I suppose there's something to be said for this new approach." Jeremiah smiled, understanding the significance of her reluctant approval. "Thank you, Miss Barrington. I believe the Belmore can honor its history while also embracing a brighter, more inclusive future." With a final nod, Claudia excused herself, but not before she gave him a small, approving smile. The encounter marked a symbolic closure to the Belmore's past and a recognition of the new path Jeremiah had set. The day ended with Jeremiah reflecting on how far they had come. He saw his journey mirrored in the experiences of his staff, who had grown and transformed along with him. The Belmore was now more than just a luxury hotel. It was a place of acceptance, resilience, and respect. As he prepared to leave for the night, Luis approached him with a grin. "Mr. King, I just wanted to say thank you for everything. Working here has changed my life." Jeremiah placed a hand on his shoulder. "Luis, it's people like you who made this possible. Thank you for believing in the vision." As he walked out into the night, Jeremiah knew that the Belmore would continue to be a beacon of dignity and unity, a place where no one would ever feel less than welcome again. In the weeks following Claudia Barrington's visit, the Belmore's transformation continued to make waves. The hotel had become a symbol of luxury that didn't merely cater to wealth but welcomed diversity, setting a new standard in the industry. Jeremiah's vision was now not only embraced but celebrated, both by his team and the wider community. But for Jeremiah, there remained one final step to fully cement his mission, one last act that would forever define the Belmore's legacy and his own. As he prepared for the next chapter in the Belmore story, Jeremiah began planning a series of charitable initiatives under the hotel's name. He wanted the Belmore not only to serve as a sanctuary for guests, but also to contribute to the city. He called his senior staff together and unveiled his idea of establishing a Belmore Foundation, which would support local community projects, provide scholarships to underserved youth, and offer hospitality training for those looking for a fresh start in life. "We have a responsibility to do more than just operate within these walls," Jeremiah said, his voice resonating with conviction. "Luxury is no longer about exclusivity, but about the positive impact we can create beyond our immediate surroundings. The Belmore Foundation will be our way of giving back to the community that has embraced our new vision. The idea received an overwhelming response. The staff was excited, especially Emma and Louise, who were eager to contribute. In their eyes, this initiative was proof of Jeremiah's dedication, a testament to the values he'd instilled in all of them. As they brainstormed ways to engage with the local community, ideas flowed freely, sparking an energy that reminded everyone of why they had embraced the Belmore's transformation in the first place. In the weeks leading up to the Foundation's inaugural event, Jeremiah found himself reflecting on the journey he'd taken. He couldn't help but think of the day he had first arrived at the Belmore years ago, only to be turned away at the door. The memory had once filled him with frustration, but now it served as a reminder of how far he had come. His ambition to transform the hotel was not driven by revenge, but by the hope of building a legacy where everyone would be welcomed with dignity. But life still had one more surprise in store for him. Just a week before the Foundation launch, a letter arrived for him at the Belmore, neatly addressed in cursive writing. Jeremiah opened it, only to discover that it was from Daniel, the same front desk manager who had once dismissed him. "Mr. King," the letter began, "I know it's been a long time since that day, but I feel compelled to apologize for the way I treated you. It wasn't just prejudice that clouded my judgment. It was my own insecurities and misguided beliefs about what success should look like. Watching the transformation of the Belmore has been humbling, and though I am no longer a part of this place, I wanted you to know how much I admire what you've done. You've turned the Belmore into something greater than any of us could have imagined." Reading the letter, Jeremiah felt an unexpected surge of emotion. Though he had long moved past the resentment he once held, Daniel's words gave him a sense of closure. The acknowledgement from the person who had once turned him away was symbolic, a reminder that even those who had wronged him could change. Moved, he wrote a letter back, expressing gratitude for Daniel's words. In it, he included an invitation to attend the Foundation's inaugural event, leaving it up to Daniel to decide if he wanted to come. The day of the Foundation's launch was a grand affair. The Belmore hosted an open house, inviting guests, community leaders, and even the local press. The grand ballroom, which had been transformed into a community gathering space, was filled with guests representing the many faces of the city. Guests mingled freely, celebrating the mission of the Belmore Foundation and the impact it was poised to make. Jeremiah took the stage to make the opening address. Dressed in a tailored suit, his presence exuded a calm confidence, but a spark of passion lit his eyes as he looked out at the crowd. "Thank you all for joining us today," he began. "The Belmore's transformation is not just the story of one hotel. It's a testament to what can be achieved when we look beyond appearances and assumptions and see each other for who we truly are. The Belmore Foundation will be dedicated to that vision, to lifting others and creating opportunities for those who need a second chance. This hotel was once a place that looked only outward, but now it's a place that reaches outward, lifting our entire community." Applause filled the ballroom, and as Jeremiah looked out, he noticed Daniel standing in the back, nodding approvingly. Their eyes met, and Daniel gave him a small, respectful nod. Jeremiah responded with a warm smile, knowing they had both come full circle. After the speech, Jeremiah mingled with the guests, catching snippets of conversation as people praised the hotel's vision. One guest, an older woman who had been a long-time patron, stopped him to express her admiration. "Mr. King, I remember when the Belmore was known for its exclusivity, but now I see that it's so much more. You've given it a soul." Jeremiah thanked her, his heart swelling with pride. For him, this was more than a business. It was a legacy that he hoped would endure long after he was gone. As the event came to a close, Jeremiah gathered his core team, Luis, Emma, Megan, and a few others, on the terrace overlooking the city. The sun was setting, casting a warm golden glow over the skyline, and the air was filled with a quiet sense of achievement. Luis raised a toast, his eyes bright with pride, to Mr. King and the Belmore. "Here's to changing lives and creating something truly extraordinary." The team clinked their glasses, laughter and cheers filling the air. Jeremiah, feeling the warmth of camaraderie and the pride of a fulfilled mission, took a moment to look at each of them. They had been part of the transformation, each contributing in their own way to making the Belmore more than just a hotel. As they stood there, watching the city lights come to life, Jeremiah felt a deep sense of peace. The Belmore was no longer just a hotel. It was a legacy, a place that would continue to stand as a beacon of respect, inclusion, and compassion. And as long as it did, Jeremiah knew that his journey, from rejection to acceptance, from anger to purpose, would live on in the walls of the Belmore and in the hearts of those who believed in its mission. In that moment, surrounded by the team he had come to think of as family, Jeremiah realized that he had finally found what he had been searching for all along. Not just success, but a purpose that transcended wealth, a purpose that would inspire generations to come.